Go Cox.
Welcome to Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network. My name is Braden Gall. You can follow me on Twitter at Braden Gall.
Mine's Erin Dugan. You can follow me on Twitter at the Erin Dugan or Instagram, Erin_Dugan.
Big show planned for you guys today. David Ubben of The Athletic, covering all things SEC, has lived in Texas for a long time, currently lives in Knoxville, has been there for a few years. So a very interesting perspective on what's happening with Tennessee, the Volunteers, the Kentucky game. We're going to talk a lot about that with him a little bit later on. Also A&M, though, because Texas A&M is a thing that we have to continually talk about. Where is the offense and a variety of other topics as it pertains to the
lack
SEC.
Thereof.
Yeah,
Texas A&M or lack thereof.
Exactly. So we will talk with David Ubben a little bit later on in the program. All right, here's a rundown of things we're going to talk about today on the show, Erin.
Don't tell me.
Is LSU now a contender? Why has Jayden Daniels evolved as a quarterback? Is Alabama going to lose another game the rest of the season? They bounce back accordingly. Ole Miss has been exposed, but we still need more data on the Rebels.
Yep.
I already mentioned Texas A&M, just WTF. But more importantly, I think we're trying to come up with a more interesting angle to A&M, which is what are the long-term effects of not doing anything if you're Jimbo Fisher, aside from just disappointing your fan base all the time. We will apologize. I will apologize to one SEC head football coach that I need to apologize to personally, probably.
So you have, in your defense, you have flirted with apologizing to him before, but what I appreciate about you is that at every step along the way, you are apologizing again and again every time you get more wrong about him. So there's respect.
And holding myself accountable. So there's that as well. The beer barrel is out in full force. You got Kentucky and Tennessee and Knoxville, so we'll talk about that. The least important Florida-Georgia game we've seen in quite some time, or at least in a year. We'll discuss that. And, of course, Arkansas and Auburn. Some questions about Arkansas as a program and a compliment for Auburn. How about that? All of that today on the show, Erin. Big show.
It is a big show.
Big show.
What if we got on here one day and we're like, we have a tiny, mediocre show planned for you guys today? It's always the biggest show.
We have
what if we have a so-so, like, could fast forward through it, like, tiny.
Don't say any of these
show.
things. We have a Texas A&M offensive metric style show.
Yeah, it's always a big show around
3.2 yards per play. That's what we do here on the pod. On the pod. We're a regular Haynes King run offense here on the show. Before we do any of that, before we hear from David, before we talk all those things we just talked about, just mentioned. Fringe Element is brought to you
by J.E. Dunn, sponsoring not only Braden's wardrobe lately, but also one of the best places to work in the entire country. They are actively hiring. So if you're looking for a new job, this would be a good time to jump on. I keep hearing a lot of recession talk, pretty depressing. Might be a good time to jump on with a company that's not going anywhere with $5 billion in annual revenue.
Yeah, that's exactly right. $5 billion in annual revenue. But most importantly, they care about their employees. They care about their people. Culture, 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 culture. What do we preach on this show about head coaches in the SEC who are successful? I'm going to apologize to one today who's building culture. It is about people. Healthy, passionate, happy employees are productive employees. It's not a hard equation to understand.
Not rocket science.
No,
it's really not.
It's not. And so many major companies don't get it, but J.E. Dunn is one that does. JEDunn.com. Tell them we sent you. You don't need any, previous experience to go work at J.E. Dunn in any sort of category, walk of life. They will find a place for you. It doesn't matter what department it's in. They will find a place for you. And more importantly, if you just care about your career, you care about working hard, you care about being a part of a team, they will provide you the place to succeed. So JEDunn.com. If you care about your career and you want people to care about your career, that's all you got to do. JEDunn.com.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. We good?
Yep.
JEDunn.com. I think there's actually a button right there that says careers. You can just click on careers. You go right there and you check it all out. So
look at you knowing about the website layout.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've gone to the internet.
I mean, you buttoned all the way up today too. Look at that shirt.
Yeah, the collar. So okay, it's a great shirt. Love the collar. Never mind.
No, it is a great shirt. It's just like Braden's got it like tied up pretty tight today.
So here's the deal. I don't do it for fashionable reasons because obviously.
Yeah,
And if you're watching,
yeah,
if you're watching on YouTube, go to the YouTubes.
we all see it.
Go to the YouTubes. Blue. Go to the YouTubes and click on the buttons and the notifications and turn us on and share the show and watch the show. I'm like in a haunted house today, so you can check it out. I have to do this thing now with polo shirts, like golf shirts, because if you wear them too many times or too much, like the collars start to get like a little slouchy, Like I don't know what the right fashionable term is for like when a collar kind of like drifts outward from your neck and it kind of gets a little flat and it doesn't
Like
look
it's
all
stretched out.
yeah, it doesn't look like crisp and tight, Like you look good, you feel good, you play good. And and so when you button it all the way up, you remove that variable, that messy variable. And while it may look a little weird, I still think it looks better than if it's all sloppy looking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I didn't know that you were having that
thing.
much trouble with your shirts.
It's a personal problem.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, got it.
David Ubben coming up. We'll talk Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, Georgia. We will apologize to one coach. What the hell? What are the long-term effects of the decision-making that's taking place at Texas A&M? Because I think everybody's beaten that horse to death. Like we know that the contract is guaranteed. We know that the offense sucks. Like, but let's spin it forward a little bit with Texas A&M. And then, of course, Bama and LSU, which is where we got to start. We got to start with LSU, man. Listen to Jayden Daniels. So they went on the 42-6 run after being down 14-3.
Yep.
To Ole Miss. Here are Jayden Daniels' numbers the last two games. So on the road against Florida and at home against Ole Miss. He is 44 of 60 passing, 73%, 597 yards, 9.9 yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, 37 rushing attempts, 165 yards on the ground, and 6 more touchdowns. I will accidentally make this case to David Ubben later on in the show.
Okay.
This is Tennessee light. They have a good defensive line. They've got a quarterback who's starting to round into form. They've got weapons that can go down the field. Their secondary is not all that great. But their quarterback is now in complete control of the offense. Special 2 games for Jayden Daniels, and we're starting to see the old Jayden Daniels from like his freshman year at Arizona State. It appears that he is far more comfortable, and the coaching staff is running the right plays with him now. A huge 2 weeks for Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this with LSU quite a bit, or I mean, at least on this podcast, about the concern not necessarily really ever being that the talent's there. It's like, what can you do with it? And as a first-year coach, you're trying to implement all these new systems. Obviously, Brian Kelly had like a much different approach than some of the more recent LSU coaches that have been in that top position. So it's how can you organize it? And it does take time. We talk about this all the time with the offensive line, that things don't just fall into place right off the bat. And same thing with the new coaching staff and the entire program is just being able to give it time to fall into place. And if you have the weapons there, obviously things fall into place a lot more quickly. And we saw with Jayden Daniels going off the way that he did, you also started to see, because of the way things are coming together, the puzzle starting to fit together, that you start to see the talent. There's like seven different LSU receivers had multiple receptions each, no one more than 4, but seven different tools in terms of catching the ball. And Brian Kelly has talked about how he really wanted to see Jayden Daniels start to trust in those guys. And we definitely saw that this past weekend. And, Kayshawn did not have a bad game either. I think he had Jayden Daniels hit him like 7 times. And yeah, you just saw Ole Miss like kind of fall apart, especially with Jackson Dart just struggling with LSU's pressure and just missing throws.
But and no Zach Evans, of course, for Ole Miss, which is a huge part of their running attack. I think the thing we learned about Ole Miss is that we cannot trust Jackson Dart when he has to carry a game on his shoulders, which was the question about Jackson Dart. Again, under 55% completion percentage or less against Tulsa, Kentucky, Auburn, and LSU. Those are the 4 best defenses Ole Miss has played. Mm-hmm. And he has had moments in those games where he just looked like, not untrustworthy. Like he's talented, but like untrustworthy in a big moment to have complete control. While when you look at Daniels, some of this is Mike Denbrock and the offensive coaching staff running a bunch more RPOs, single read offense, let him be more decisive and quick with his processes.
Right.
And he is like, he's more comfortable. The team is more comfortable with him. Like, this is also why you pay a lot of money for someone like Brian Kelly. Like,
Yeah.
I just like to coalesce all the pieces and to understand which levers to push and pull at what times, because now they've figured out what Jayden Daniels is comfortable doing. They're doing more of it, and they're doing it better. And that is, to me, that is a sign of a veteran head coach who's won hundreds of games.
Yeah, it definitely it highlights too when you're watching like someone like Jayden Daniels kind of navigate and lead this team and then decide when he's going to use his legs and throwing very catchable balls all throughout the game. It kind of just brings more attention to the fact that Jackson Dart is not there. I do think it's interesting that LSU had 500 yards in total offense and Ole Miss had only 96 less than that at 404, which is really, really interesting because if you look at the score of this game, and the fact that you would not think there is only 100 yards in difference on offense, but Ole Miss just could not seem to make things happen when it came to actually putting points on the board.
It's two pretty big offensive, performances from LSU.
Yeah, I mean,
people are quick to be like, "Oh, it's Ole Miss and it's Florida," and I'm like, "Well, okay, that's true, but almost 10 yards an attempt, 73% completion percentage, 11 total touchdowns, no interceptions. That's good against air, number one. Mm-hmm. But, on the road in the swamp against Florida, that's not like, you're not playing like Austin Peay. Like that's, and then Ole Miss Ole Miss was a top 10 team. Like you say what you want about maybe being overrated, which they were, but that's a top 10 team. So now LSU's a top 15 team. They control their own destiny. Alabama, meanwhile, handles its business. It is now 3-0 against Mike Leach. Nick Saban is, of course. The total combined score in those 3 games for Mike Leach since entering the SEC from Mississippi State, which I still think is a good team, is 120-15. So Nick Saban got right. But here's the thing. These two are both going to be off this week. They're going to play in 2 weeks in Baton Rouge. It's going to be awesome. I guess, is it too – go ahead, Erin.
I was just – no, you finish. And then I have one question about this before we move on.
I was going to say, is it too reactionary to say LSU is going to be a factor in this race? Because now they control their own destiny. And if I'm a Bama fan, like, I'm not worried about Ole Miss, but I'm worried about how I match up with LSU because, again, LSU is sort of like Tennessee from a strengths and weaknesses standpoint. Quarterback that can run, very confident, big receivers, great defensive line that can pressure the quarterback. Their weaknesses are the same as Tennessee's weaknesses, and they're going to get Alabama at home. Like, I am this close to saying, like, I think LSU is going to win the game.
Damn.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy. I do think that Alabama should be, definitely concerned about the matchup, like you just said. I don't know. I feel like I'm not quite ready to go there, but I definitely think it's going to be a way better game than either of us thought it would be if you asked us at the beginning of the season, because we didn't have a damn clue what LSU was going to look like. Do we feel like, before we move on in a little bit less technical area here, is rushing the field a little much
for LSU?
Yeah.
Kinda.
It felt like you're kind of watering down the effect. Like Tennessee, Alabama, I know it looked fun and everyone's like, wow, they got great videos. Like, we should do that. But that's not, I mean, you won a national championship in the last 3 years and then you're going to rush the field because you beat Ole Miss. It's like questionable.
Yeah, I've always there's a couple of rules I would put in place for like field or court storming. Mm-hmm. And there's a handful of them. Like in basketball, like you can't court storm during the NIT. Like you can't do that.
Absolutely not.
Can't do that.
You really can't.
Generally, it probably needs to be like a big upset. You need to be an underdog. Obviously, you're at home, so it has to come against a higher ranked team, which technically was the case against Old Mississippi. But like LSU was a favorite in that game. Like they were a 2-point favorite in the game.
I know.
So I think that the 2 rules that I think it violates, you tell me what you think. The 2 rules is you can't have won a national championship in like the last 15 years. 10 or 15 years. Like,
right.
If you've won a natty in the last 10 or 15 years, you just don't ever get to storm the quarter field. And if you're favored, if you're favored at home, you're supposed to win the game, according to Vegas.
Favored, I don't know. It's different when you're knocking off a dynasty and you're ending a drought that's been present for a long, long time. Like Tennessee, Alabama absolutely makes sense.
They were
This
a 10
felt
point.
like
Tennessee was a 10-point underdog.
yeah.
LSU was favored to win the game. Like if you're favored and you've won the Natty, you can't storm the
Just
field.
doesn't make it as fun when it actually is time to rush the field. Everybody chill out.
I agree with that. Now, if they beat Alabama, they'll probably rush the field again. So
yeah, and then that'll make more sense. But they will have wished they waited.
Alabama. So you're sort of like upset curious then. You're not ready to go like full transition into upset, but you're upset curious.
I think I'm upset. I might be a little past curious, but I'm not ready. I'm not ready to say I'm going to take LSU. I don't think.
No hormone treatment yet. Okay, I got it.
Thank you.
So I think it's gonna be an awesome game. I think LSU's like mini version of Tennessee, and I think they're gonna present some of the same challenges to Alabama in the certain spots that it matters, and I think it's gonna be fun to watch. And all of this, of course, LSU's doing without their best defensive player, Mason Smith, who again we'll talk with David Ubben a little bit later on about this, but he'll go into more detail. So Ole Miss on the other hand, they're sort of exposed, but like it doesn't feel as bad because this is what we expected. They did not run the ball very well. They still just need to continue to build depth and develop Jackson Dart. They are going to play Texas A&M, which we will get to in a second, this weekend, which is only like a 2.5 3-point spread for Ole Miss on the road. But Ole Miss still has to kind of continue to prove itself. Like it's got like my issue with Ole Miss all along was it's hard to replace like era-defining players and then continue to be as good at a program like Ole Miss that doesn't always quote unquote reload. And they had a really easy schedule. They got Auburn in a dysfunctional year. They were kind of lucky to be Kentucky. This could spiral. I don't think it will, but this could spiral with their schedule and a game against A&M. So Ole Miss is just in like prove it mode every time out now at this point.
For sure. And you touched on the depth. I mean, and that's definitely, especially on defense, Ole Miss is definitely lacking that. And then don't want to leave out that they do have some guys out. They're missing Troy Brown and AJ Finley. So they've got some, they're trying to make up for a little bit of the depth is not totally there. And what it looked like on Saturday, which is something that a lot of teams it's one of those battles that you kind of have to overcome each year. It doesn't necessarily just go away when you have it established, which is how do teams play from behind. And Ole Miss looked like they hadn't done that. And honestly, it's because they really haven't.
Right.
They've only trailed twice all year. One was against Vandy at some point, which probably feels less scary than it would against another team because it's, Vandy's going to run out of steam, especially with the way they are this year. And they trailed in the second quarter against Tulsa. So like a number, 420 minutes of football for Ole Miss all year. They've only trailed 22 of those minutes. So
and most of that was LSU? Or that was before LSU?
I think that was before LSU. Okay. They had played 420 minutes. They've only trailed by like 20 minutes of those 420.
Yeah,
so I think that's one of the intangible things. It's just what does a team play like from behind, and something that I think teams kind of have to learn over and over each year. And just going to have to see a little bit of grit out of them, but also just how are they going to fill in those holes, like depth holes on defense.
I'm curious if things go sideways for Ole Miss. It's still like if they win 8 games, that still hits the Vegas over. That would still be considered a good season by any normal Ole Miss standards.
Right.
It's a step back from last year, but I think that was to be expected. If things go sideways, do you think that impacts Lane Kiffin's wandering eye at all? Like whether it's Auburn or Nebraska or the NFL or just whatever in general, like do you think that how they perform over the next few weeks could give him insight into how difficult the job is long term? Does that make sense, that question?
That question does make sense. You mentioned Auburn and who else?
Nebraska or the NFL or anywhere.
If I'm Lane Kiffin, there is no way in hell I'm leaving Oxford to go try to figure out the dumpster fire in Auburn, Alabama. Yeah. And I don't know this. I have not sat in a room of boosters or donors or admin for either Ole Miss or Auburn ever. I have to imagine, based on the culture of the school, it is much easier to be in that room with higher ups at Ole Miss than it is at Auburn. And Lane, even though Lane is a wild card, he has spent a lot of time building a culture there. We just don't see it as much as we do with some of the other schools. but he has spent a lot of time making sure that his guys are having open conversations, whether or not it's about race or equality, whether it's about like sportsmanship, how to be a good teammate. Like there's a lot of that stuff that goes on behind the scenes because we see him throwing clipboards, but there is stuff that's being laid in place. So I think he has a little bit more of emotional attachment than maybe we think Lane normally does, but I am not leaving Ole Miss to go to Auburn under any means from
No,
him.
no.
It would have
But
to be in serious contract, and even then, I don't know if I'd do it.
yeah, how to teach people how to wear long sleeve t-shirts underneath short sleeve t-shirts. I think what's which is almost as bad as my buttons right here on my shirt.
No, it's way worse.
All right, good. It's all about the hierarchy. Like if he wants to be competing for national championships, you probably can't do it at Ole Miss. Like that's it. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you definitely can't do it at Ole Miss. But life is probably very good if you are Lane Kiffin and you are posting winning records every year in Oxford, Mississippi. I imagine life is pretty good. Not a lot of stress. Not a lot of stress.
It may get to a point where if he can't get over that 8-9 game situation, and there's a big jump between 8 and 10 or 8 and 11, then maybe Lane starts to get wandering eyes. I don't see that happening right now. I just don't think there's an opportunity that's good enough.
Yeah, and so on the other side, they'll play A&M this weekend on the road. Tough defense, although A&M's rushing metrics on defense aren't as good as you might think. Their success rate, which is a concern because, again, we'll talk about South Carolina in a second. But A&M, we know sort of all the bullet points, right? Like A&M now losing record, 4 losses, 3-4. This was supposed to be a year for them to build into what is supposed to be a championship run in 2023. Jimbo Fisher's guaranteed contract, the recruiting class, the summer tiff with Saban, the lack of development on offense and quarterbacks, like blah, blah, blah. Like we know all of this stuff. One quick point I would say, it is Connor Wigman's job. Give him the job. He is the 5-star freshman. Let him play the rest of the year, and let's see. They may not have a choice, but let's see what he looks like. Let's see what he does, because this is where we are now. So like, why not learn about what he is and give him some reps? So I think that's number one. But number two, like, what if he this is where I'm thinking about our sponsor, J.E. Dunn, because you should all be thinking about our sponsor, jedunn.com. Like, make smart decisions. And Jimbo Fisher is entering a territory here where if he doesn't do something smart about his program and doesn't make a smart career choice, like going to J.E. Dunn, jedunn.com, and doesn't make a smart career choice, like I think you can start to see some longer term effects start to bubble. I don't think they're there yet, but you look on the horizon of what's coming in this conference for a team in Texas and the way the portal works and the way this offense, like if he does not go hire a coordinator or let go of the offense, just get out of his own way, put the ego aside.
Yep.
That there are some there could be long-term ramifications for how other people view this program, namely recruits and football players.
Right.
And where you're about to go with this.
Which is Braden and I mean, we talked about this briefly before we jumped on here, which is just how does this change looking forward to the future with Texas coming into the conference? The thing at the end of the day, because of this powerhouse that Texas is for high school football, how many 5-star guys, big size, like sizable linemen, all these very, very talented kids coming out of Texas, which is also, I mean, and just due to the size of the state, there are always going to be Texas kids that go to Texas schools. But the difference now is with the change in the transfer portal and not having to wait and being able to jump ship a little bit quicker. And you're seeing all these games on ESPN, on SEC Network every single week, on one of the other large networks. It's everywhere. It's in your face. It's on social. You see holes and you're like, okay, well, before Texas, since Texas isn't in the conference yet, choose Alabama, because you and I talked about this too. There's a gap in the receiving, like at the receiving position at Alabama. Why do you not jump ship on an offense that's 3-4 right now, that's not doing what you need it to do? It's not going to give you the limelight you need, whether you're moving to a different school or a different, in the NFL later on. And why are you not jumping ship? Now that's just going to become even more competitive when you've got Texas with Steve Sarkisian there, with a Manning there. And it's still in your home state where your friends and family who watch you blow up the high school football field are going to be able to still travel and see you. I mean, it's going to get wildly more competitive for a number of reasons.
I mean, there's it to me, it's just insane. Like literally the definition of insanity to just continue as they're doing. But because again, it's obvious that it's not working. We've joked about it now for weeks on the show. Like, go take some ayahuasca and wander around West Texas and go find Odessa. Go find Billy Bob Thornton at Odessa Permian and scheme up some shit that you need to figure out.
Or if you're not into drugs, just let Connor Wegman get reps.
Well, and again, just hire.
Because you're 3 and 4, you're not making a run on anything. Just
no. And
get
David,
your guy to have experience on the field.
And David Ubben will say this later. Like, they are foundationally still very secure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and he's going to talk about, like, he's like, Ubben's basic take is that they are, and I don't want to steal his thunder here, but basically they're an offensive coordinator away from being a pretty big program. And I don't necessarily disagree, but that requires Jimbo Fisher to get out of his own way. And, but I do agree that this is an interesting point. Like, if I'm Evan Stewart and I'm a 5-star wide receiver, why would I like just languish in that offense? I'm not going to make myself any more money at the NFL level. I'm not going to develop my skills as a player. Like, I'm not going to showcase my talent. Like, nothing is good if I'm a star weapon on offense in particular. Why would I not go to Alabama? And I think you're dead on to say Texas, because the thing that A&M has over Texas right now is the SEC patch on the shoulder pad. Like, they can say, come play in the SEC.
Right.
But if Texas has the SEC patch and the offensive guru and the quarterbacks and the offense in a state where all they run is 7-on-7 offenses and spread offenses, there is a long-term recruiting play here. If I'm Texas or Alabama or Oklahoma that I'm making against A&M every day I'm selling this. Look how much garbage that is. Come play with us. We're going to be in the SEC in 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, you can, again, we'll always be able to recruit at both of those schools, but there's a lot more in-state competition when Texas is there, and something's got to change. And if you're stagnant, we talk about stagnation all the time as it relates to coaches, as it relates to athletic departments and programs, and what it can do. It can actually just completely suck the life out of you. You've got to make a change when you have enough evidence to know that it's time to make one. And there is offensively enough evidence
for Jimbo
Fisher to do something, just like there is enough to fire Brian Harsin.
Yeah, there's enough. I don't think we need any more evidence. Like,
we don't.
It's not even worth talking about how bad the offense is. It's just, here's a number. Here's the one thing I'll say. They have not scored more than 24 points against 9 FBS opponents. It's been 9 games since they have scored more than 24 points. That is a half of football. Tennessee scored a 50 burger. Now, I know that was UT Martin, so it doesn't really count. But, like, they dropped a 50 burger at halftime. I was teaching my 5 and 6-year-old how to say, they dropped a 50 burger, Dad. Like, I was teaching them how to say 50 burger, and, like, they loved it. It was great.
I'm sure they did.
Texas A&M hasn't, and even the game they played this year where they scored 30, they scored 31 against Sam Houston State. 31.
What was the final Alabama-Tennessee?
52-49.
So they put up 50 points on Bama.
52-49. Yeah.
Twice the number of points, over twice the number of points Tennessee put up on Bama this year than A&M has put up in however many games you just said. 9
games against FBS opponents, they have not topped 24 points.
Half. Okay. Yikes. I think we've driven the point home.
Yikes. Okay. Listen, here's the deal. JDunn.com is our great and amazing and wonderful sponsor. Go to JDunn.com if you would like to make a change in your career. If you need to change offensive coordinators and you need to remove yourself from this situation because it's gotten stale and you need to solve problems at work.
Yep.
J. Dunn needs to have a sit down with Jimbo Fisher and tell the Aggie coaching staff, here's how you need to do it. Here's how you need to approach it. Just get out of the way. Hire an offensive coordinator if you don't like drugs.
Yeah, if you're not into ayahuasca, you need that. That's an interesting line we drew, isn't it?
You need a shaman.
If you're not into ayahuasca, you need to at least get your J Dunn or get your young 5-star quarterback more reps.
They're paying us money for this, by the way.
The folks. Direct line. If you can't see it, we can't help you.
JEDunn.com. Jimbo Fisher, make a smart career decision. And all of you listening, make a smart career decision and go to J. Dunn. All right. Real quickly here, an apology. Got to apologize.
Please do.
So I don't mean this to be a backhanded apology or compliment here.
Is it going to be?
I don't know. You tell me.
Okay.
I don't think South Carolina is particularly good at anything.
Okay, well,
like I
this
don't
is
think
not
they're
going to be that nice.
I don't
Then.
think they're great at offense. The metrics say so. They're not great on defense. The metrics say so. They're not great against the pass or in throwing the ball. They're not great against the run or running the ball. They're pretty damn good on special teams, which his last name is Beamer. So, okay, that makes
Yep.
sense.
Okay.
But I don't know why or how they're doing it. I don't know if it's culture. I don't know if it's the sunglasses. I don't know if it's the shtick on the sideline when his team is losing by 3 touchdowns. He's very memeable. I don't know what it is he's doing, but they are going to get to bowl eligibility for the second time in 2 years at South Carolina. They're going to hit the over on win totals. They're going to overachieve 2 straight years. I don't think they have a lot of talent. They have more this year than last year. So I'm sorry. I am sorry to Shane Beamer. I am sorry to South Carolina fans. You guys, this is impressive stuff. You got a win over Kentucky, even without Will Levis. Don't care. Win over Florida and Auburn last year, and now a win over Texas A&M at home, where you led for literally every second of the game. I'm sorry. I am sorry.
Braden's apology looked like y'all aren't good at anything, but I'm sorry. No, but I hear you.
You tell me, what do you think they're great at? Tell me what they're great at.
You know what? I just think that they're on the other side of what I mentioned this last week, is that South Carolina has a way of playing. I mean, not to say they haven't had blowout losses, because they have, but there's a lot of times in South Carolina's in the not so distant past that South Carolina has hung with teams that they should not have been able to hang with and lost those close games. And then they played down to competition, whether it's Vandy or whatever. They're now just on the other side of all those games they just couldn't close. It's like they played up to their competition and they always end up blowing it. But now they're just like figuring out a way to get it done.
So they're not great at football, but they're pretty good at football.
Yeah, they just play close games and they used to lose, and now they play close games and now they somehow figure out a way to win. I guess that's saying the same thing.
I mean, they do a lot of stuff that doesn't show up in box scores, in metrics. They manage like field position. They play a really smart field position game. They make you drive the length of the field. They make you settle for field goals. Like they do a lot of stuff that doesn't it's hard to put metrics on.
Yeah, that's fair.
Special teams, they're very good on special teams. Which again, his last name's Beamer. Again, this is not meant to focus on why they're doing what they're doing. I would argue, who cares? If you're a South Carolina fan, who bleeping cares?
Yeah.
If you're listening to my analysis from the preseason where I'm like, I'm not buying it. I don't think Rattler's that good. I don't think this and I don't think that. And they're not going to go to a bowl game. Like, who cares? Shove it in my face. Tell me to fuck off. Like, I was wrong and I apologize.
So a big part of what's been wrong with South Carolina too, and I understand this it's a very close topic to my heart because of the teams that I was raised on, which is just not easy to do. But South Carolina is notorious for shooting themselves in the foot with stupid penalties, with making stupid mistakes. And they haven't been doing that. They didn't do that this weekend. They ran the football. They made whatever necessary defensive stands they needed to make when the time came around. And they just didn't do careless, stupid stuff. And maybe they were doing more careless, stupid stuff than we realized before, and just being able to pull out some of those dumb penalties, gave them much more of a platform to win these close games than we thought. Just made I don't know exactly what it is, but
here's the other thing.
Dumb errors.
Because we talked to him in the summer. Go check out our interview, and he gave you a great answer about, he wasn't a play caller. He was never a play caller. He's never a head coach, doesn't have an experience. And he gave us a great answer about just because you can call a play or a great, defensive or offensive coordinator doesn't mean you have the same skills to be a great head coach. And that you can make fun of him for the shtick and for all the memeability. He's very memeable. You can make fun of that all you want to, but at least he's having a good time. And I think more importantly, I think it's genuine. I think it really is. When he does the TikTok thing at SEC Media Days with the sunglasses, I think he really is trying to have fun and let his players have fun with him. Yeah. And if Mark Stoops wants to talk shit and then he beats you, sorry, dude, you got to take your loss. You got to wear the L. And I'm okay with a little Spurrier coming back into the SEC. If we have a little bit more fun watching football, is that a bad thing for people? I don't know. I am slowly being converted into a Shane Beamer, not even a believer, just like an appreciator of Shane Beamer.
He started with the players, and it seems to be working. That was his highest priority when he got in there, was to make sure that everyone was on the same page. His players felt appreciated. He spent time understanding them, and people. It's still a game of people, so that's what he's doing.
Yep, I agree. Be a regular person with your players. Josh Heupel, yep. Sam Pittman, Mark Stoops, Shane Beamer. It's okay to have fun when you win. It's okay to troll a guy when you win. It's okay to act stupid or silly. It's okay. Because honestly, I think he really, really means it, and he's very genuine about it. I don't know if they're going to beat Tennessee or Clemson or win a national championship. No one's picking that. But like for now, I'm sorry, South Carolina. You were right. Your coach is doing work, and you're going to go to a bowl game 2 years in a row when no one thought you could.
Yep.
Like, who cares about everything else? Just enjoy it and have fun. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. Go Cox.
Yes. Yes. Old Cock Commander there. Cock Commander in charge. Go Cox. All right. Kentucky, the beer barrel, Kentucky and Tennessee. We'll talk a little bit about this with David Ubben. Of course, he lives in Knoxville, has been around that program for a long time. So we'll talk about this. I just want to throw out a couple of stats here. I do think that Kentucky is uniquely qualified to make this an interesting game. And we will talk about Florida and Georgia and Arkansas and Auburn after we hear from David Ubben. So stick around for a couple of thoughts on one of the most important cocktail parties of all time. But the beer barrel, I think Kentucky has got an opportunity to make this a tricky game. For some reason, I think there's some pride on the line in this one too for Kentucky. Statistically, the only 3 times they have won since 1984 were against Mark Stoops beat a 3-7 Jeremy Pruitt team where he got fired. They beat a 4-8 Butch Jones team in 2017 that got Butch Jones fired. And they won 10-7 against Derek Dooley in 2011. So even when Kentucky football has been great, their 3 wins are Dooley, Butch Jones, and Jeremy Pruitt, 2 of which got fired. All of this says that Tennessee should roll big. The point spread has exploded. I don't know how they stop Tennessee, but there's something about this game that I got spidey senses tingling saying there's going to be a long stretch of this game where I think Tennessee fans are going to be very nervous. I think Kentucky's going to play well.
For sure. I mean, if you're a Tennessee fan, I mean, they should be getting Cedric Tillman back, right? So that should be like that
at some point.
Some point. Hopefully if you're a Vol, it's now. And then that's going to, put Kentucky secondary in a little bit more trouble if that is the case. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a great game. I'm interested to see exactly how they match up against each other, but they've got 2 very strong arms in both of these quarterbacks, in Hendon Hooker and Will Levis. So it should be. I don't know what the actual predicted score. What did you say the spread was? Did you already say it?
I think it started at like 7, but it has gone up to like 11, 12, 13-ish. So okay. I think Kentucky has really smart defensive coaching staff. They've got a good defensive line, and I think they have a star quarterback potentially, and they've got some nice weapons that can attack Tennessee's corners. I would like Tennessee to cover and to pull away in the 4th quarter. I don't think it's close. I think they get their 40 points or whatever. But I just think there's going to be a long stretch of this game where it feels basically even. If that makes sense. Like
It does.
There's not going to be a moment where I think Kentucky can win this game. But I do think that there's going to be a big chunk of it where we're like, wait a second. This Kentucky team's pretty established, pretty good. Right. They're not just a bunch of pushovers. Like this is not, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with a.
No, I mean, well, in Kentucky also, it's not just like they're more versatile in terms of what we've seen for Kentucky on offense in previous years, which is they do have like some tools at the receiving position, and they've got a quarterback that can get the ball there. So I do think it sets it up to be a better matchup. I'm with you. I don't think Kentucky will come out on top of this game, and I think Tennessee will probably cover. But I do think it'll happen late, like you said. I think it'll be close till the end.
Yeah, I think so as well. As it as the weather here in Nashville makes my studio very dark. If you're watching on the YouTube, the weather is getting ominous outside. Here's the other thing. Georgia's next week. So if you're Tennessee and you are at all overlooking this team, a team that you have won all but 3 times since 1984, this would be a bad time to overlook somebody.
Yes, it would.
So Georgia's ahead next week. Just keep that in mind. This is why Bama and LSU always have a bye week. before they play.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking ahead, this is where the culture and the trust and all that stuff for Heupel is going to play a role. They were up for Alabama, played well. They were up for Florida, played well. They came out slow against Pitt, but they were up for that game. They've been up for all the big games. So let's see if they stay up for this Kentucky game. The beer barrel needs to come back and be a thing, by the way. It needs to be a real thing. We need a real trophy. I know why it wasn't. It's sensitive for certain folks. I get it. But just if you don't know what I'm talking about, just do some Googling. All right, so let's hear from David Ubben. He has a lot more to say about Kentucky, Tennessee. So let's hear from David Ubben. When we come back, we'll touch on the cocktail party, Arkansas and Auburn. We have a compliment to give Auburn. How about that? We'll do that. But before we do, here is our conversation with the Athletics, David Ubben. The host of Football and Grits, national columnist for The Athletic, reporter covering college football, a man who will literally go the extra mile in wingtips for his audience. David Ubben joining us here on the show. David, how are you, sir? What's up, man?
Still recovering from walking all over Tennessee's campus, chasing goalposts in dress shoes. But no, I'm doing good. It's been a fun season full of surprises. And in Tennessee's case, a lot of, good surprises. And it's the energy around here is palpable. And it's been weird because last year, they were kind of in that middle where they aren't really good enough to be interesting or bad enough to be interesting. And this year it's kind of been like a big spotlight. We're doing a ton of Tennessee stuff this year. So it's been fun, man.
Yeah. And as someone who went to college there's a lot of hills. Literally they're called the hills. So there you go. So you are part of the reason I wanted to have you on is just, I love your insight, but also you have a unique perspective on both the state of Texas and of course the place that you currently live. You're not technically on the Knoxville beat anymore, but you do live in Knoxville, and so you're around the people. You're a man in the people, and so I'm curious what the last two, because you said it's palpable, the energy's there. Georgia game coming up in 2 weeks. They got Kentucky at home this week. Tennessee does, and we'll talk Jimbo. We'll talk LSU. But I just have you've been there through the Pruitt era. You've lived there for a while. Just like the nausea and the anxiety now is gone because of the Florida win and the Alabama win. So now it's different. Does it feel like house money? Does it feel like a party? Does it feel like Animal House? Like, what does it feel like?
It's hard to say exactly kind of where they're at because I think now that they've had kind of a week and a half after the Bama game, I think people are kind of dreaming a little bit. And so there's that kind of nervousness around Kentucky because Kentucky can ugly things up a little bit. So you kind of sense a little bit of that. And I think it's just an unfamiliar place for Tennessee to be because in some ways they are house money because they have, exceeded expectations by so much already. But then at the same breath, you don't know how many bites you get at the apple. And Tennessee is very seriously knocking on the door of the playoff, and they don't have to do anything spectacular to get there. They already did the spectacular. They beat Alabama. So if you beat Georgia, certainly that all but assures you a playoff spot. But at this point, if you beat Kentucky, you beat South Carolina, you're probably sitting there at the end with a really good case. And so, that's easier said than done. Kentucky's a good team. South Carolina's winning some ball games. And the reality is that Tennessee has not played a ton of games over the last decade where they had everything to gain, literally, or nothing to gain, and literally everything to lose. And that is a weird spot for them to be in. So ultimately, there's a ton of excitement. And I think, when you just talk to people, obviously, I live in Knoxville, neighbors, friends, a lot of people that are really big Tennessee fans. For most of the Pruitt era, when you'd bring it up, it'd be kind of a groan or kind of we'll see. And now everybody's smiling, everybody's happy. Everybody wants to talk about, people are still talking about the Alabama game. Oh, this is the best night I've ever had watching football and all that stuff. And so, it's fun because this place has been so starved and has wanted success so bad. And it's really an interesting spot to be in because not only do they get success, but they're getting it right now when no one really expected it quite to this level. And for one, even Josh Heupel's arrival, people were kind of wait and see. Nobody was throwing a guy a parade when he got here. And then coming into the season, I thought Tennessee was one of the 15 best teams to start the season. I was surprised they weren't ranked. But they weren't ranked coming into the year. And now you're sitting here with a very real chance to make the playoff. And I think for a lot of people, it's kind of surreal.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me, and I think you see Belichick do this in the NFL, but the Vols are about to face arguably the two best defensive coordinators not named Saban on their schedule. I know Pat Narduzzi and that defensive line for Pittsburgh were very good, and LSU's defensive line is very good. But Stoops and Kirby Smart just have sort of a different intellect when it comes to defensive scheme. And I don't expect Kentucky to be able to win, but I think there's going to be long stretches of the game where it's going to feel like Kentucky has figured something out on defense. And I don't know about you, but the knock on Heupel's system has always been it's a fairly simple system to figure out. What is it just Hooker that's special? Is it the weaponry that's special? Is it that they haven't played Georgia yet? What is it about? Like, what is the key to unlocking the defensive approach to Tennessee, if that makes sense? Or is there not one at all? Or is Kirby Smart just going to be watching Mark Stoops all weekend?
Well, you have to have athletes. I mean, I've covered this system for a decade or so, going back to Art Briles and Baylor and my time in Texas. So I'm very familiar with kind of how this all works. And it does start with the run game up front. But to succeed in this system, you need, I think the number one thing you have to have is a ton of speed on the outside. And obviously you see that with Jalen Hyatt. You see that with Brew McCoy. They work Jalen Hyatt out of the slot some. Cedric Tillman is pretty fast, but he's also just a guy that can just beast and go over people. So you got to have that receiver talent. Guys that are fast and bigger guys can help as well. You got to have a pretty good offensive line up front, big guys that can push the pile, and Tennessee has got those. And then the quarterback stuff, part of it is decision making, but more of it, I think, is downfield accuracy, because the defense has to respect, hey, we've got to be careful because they can burn us over the top. And Tennessee obviously can do that. Hendon Hooker has given himself the ability to do that. I think you saw that early last year, that Joe Milton could get it out there, and he had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity of scheming guys open. And if you can't hit them, that's a problem. But when you got a guy who can hit them, all of a sudden you've got the front runner for the Heisman there. So you have to have athletes defensively. Schematically, you have to have athletes up front that you can stop the run with 5, maybe 6 guys in the box. And so when you have really good defensive linemen and linebackers that can take away the run, and that's a lot of what Pitt was able to do, is keep everything in front of them and then take away the run. Don't give them 6-7. Get them into some 3rd and long, get them out of rhythm, make them play, get them in predictable situations, because it's a lot of RPO as well. And when you get in the RPO situation, that's a problem for defenses when you get them in really awkward positions. So it's basically, if you don't have the athletes, you're going to get torched. We saw that with South Carolina last year. We saw that with Missouri last year. Obviously, UT Martin. And when Tennessee can get on top of people, this is an offense that's built to score 60 and 70 if they play teams that are not ready for it. So schematically, you have to be sound. You got to have corners that can run. You gotta have to play some man. You can't just zone it up all day on this, because they're going to scheme it. I think we saw that with Bama, losing Jalen Hyatt out of the slot repeatedly. So you do have to play some man against this, a lot of man press if you got guys who can stick. So there's no secret sauce. I mean, I think that's the thing with defensive coordinators, is I don't think that anybody's, at this point, when you have a system that's been around this long, that 13-something teams run it, defensive coordinators know how to stop it, but you have to actually do it. It's like stopping the pick and roll. Everybody knows how to stop the pick and roll, but if you run it well and you have really good athletes and really good players running it, it's really difficult. And that's where Tennessee's at. They've got a good offensive line. They've got good backs. They have unbelievable speed at receiver. And they got Hendon Hooker, who seems to know exactly when to run, when to extend plays. The game seems to move slowly, and then when guys get over the top, he's hitting them. And so when you got all those things mixing together, it's just very, very difficult. So there's not some secret sauce to stopping this. It's a matter of having to execute, to borrow a phrase from every coach in college football history.
Yeah, it's not like we didn't know what Karl Malone was going to do when Stockton gave him the ball. Like, we know. Pretty
much. I mean, I think it really is very similar, I think, to in the NBA running the high pick and roll type stuff, because
you know what Curry's going to do.
It doesn't matter if at the end of the day, it is a pick your poison thing. If you go over the top, they're going to dump it down or go by you. If you try to go underneath the screen, they're going to pick it pop. Like, it's there's not a secret scheme you can do to stop this offense. You got to be good defensively.
So Kentucky's won this game 3 times. I want to move on to Texas A&M and a few other things, but Kentucky's won this game 3 times since 1984. Mm-hmm. All 3 of them were against very bad Tennessee teams that got Butch Jones fired, that got Jeremy Pruitt fired, and it was the year before Derek Dooley got fired. All 3 of them were ugly games, really bad Tennessee teams, losing record. In fact, 2 of the worst Tennessee teams of all time. Does Kentucky have the athletes? Because even when Kentucky has been good, Tennessee has been able to beat this team. even when they have 10-win seasons and Mark Stoops has got it rolling? I know Levis on the other side is going to cause some problems down the field. I especially think with Barryon Brown, the freshman, I think is going to create some matchup problems down the field. But do they have the dudes on defense to do the things you're talking about?
No, but I think the road for Kentucky to win this game is not, they're going to shut down Tennessee's offense. The road for Tennessee's game for Kentucky to win this game is, for one, you slow it down, you limit the possessions, obviously. I think last year Tennessee ran 47 offensive snaps against Kentucky. They averaged about 70 to 80 this year. So some of that last year was hitting some big plays. I think they had a kick.
Well, they only had didn't they only have 14 minutes time of possession or something? And
yeah, but I look more at plays. Time of possession,
okay, right.
No coach that runs the system cares at all about time of possession. Plays, if your defense is facing 90 plays, that's a problem. If your offense is running 50 plays, that's a problem.
Yeah,
so more than time of possession is total plays. But besides that, the way Kentucky wins this game is you get a subpar performance from the offense. Hooker misses a couple throws. Maybe you force a turnover. But for Kentucky, the key to slowing down the offense is in their offense, because I think they have the capability. Tennessee's got a really stout run defense right now. I think they're in the top 10 nationally in defensive yards per carry. But if you can establish the run with Chris Rodriguez, who's, really, really solid, and you can protect Will Levis, Kentucky is very, very bad at protecting the quarterback right now. They're, one of the worst teams in the country at protecting. You got to protect him. But Tennessee is not good at corner. They're okay at safety, but their corners are really below average. And you got Barryon Brown, and you got Tavion Robinson, and you got Will Levis who can get them the ball. And if he can hit some balls over the top, I don't think this is going to be like a 50 to 40 game, kind of similar to last year, just because I think that Kentucky's going to slow this down a little bit. But they're going to hit some big plays, I think. And Tennessee, Tennessee needs a B+ game to really win this thing without needing anything spectacular. But for Kentucky, like I said, I think you've got to slow it down, limit possessions, be able to run the ball, which is, I think, the biggest if. If Kentucky can run the ball and average 4, 5, 6 yards a carry, they're going to be okay. But if Tennessee can stuff the run, I think that really is the key to this ball game, because if they can stuff the run and they get Kentucky into these pass positions, Tennessee is the best team in the SEC, a top 20 team at pressuring the quarterback. Kentucky cannot protect Will Levis. So if Tennessee can run away with this, if they can get them in some bad situations. But for me, Kentucky's got to slow it down, be able to run the ball and hit those balls down the field to Brown and Robinson. If they can do that, this could be a dangerous spot for Tennessee.
I think one of the key positions is going to be 1st and 10. If Chris Rodriguez is getting the ball and he's getting 5, 6, 7 yards and they're in second and short, second and short is when you take those shots, and that's when you put him in a really dicey situation on defense. Rodriguez is gonna have to be massive in this game. There's no question. All right, let's go back to your former stomping grounds back over in Texas, and I want to talk LSU in a second, but Texas A&M 3-4. This was supposed to be the build year. To the championship caliber team in 2023, clearly they've regressed. We all know about the contract. I think this is. I've said this on the show now for weeks. I just think Jimbo Fisher needs to take some ayahuasca with Aaron Rodgers and walk around West Texas or something and find out what they're doing in high school. Is this a permanently broken thing? Is Jimbo Fisher overrated because of Jameis Winston? Is this a situation where they're a couple of tweaks away from finding a solution? Is it Connor Wigman time permanently to see what you've got? What are the right questions to be asking about Texas A&M right now?
This may be naive, and this may be wishful thinking from an A&M perspective, but I really think they're an offensive scheme change away from being a juggernaut. I just think this offense, it's not the play calling, it's not the talent. Evan Stewart's really good. I think Haynes King, Connor Wigman, they're good enough. I think they can win you some ball games at the end of the day. But the scheme is bad. The scheme just does not free guys up in space. They've got, obviously Anaya Smith has been injured, but, Devin A-Chain is a guy that they've got some special players. And Evan Stewart, is obviously a hugely talented freshman. They have not been able to scheme those guys and get them down the field, get them open, get those backs in space and be able to protect and get them balls downfield. They're just not explosive. And how many times you have to see it, in the SEC the last 2 or 3 years, you got to score points to win in this league. There are going to be nights when you're going to have to score 40. You just will. And if you can't on any given night against anyone, you can lose to a lot of teams. You can lose to an App State. You can lose to South Carolina. And that's what we've seen from Texas A&M. They look a whole lot like the Pruitt-era Tennessee right now, honestly.
Yeah.
They have much better athletes
Yikes.
on defense, but just the offense is ugly. It's not Iowa, San Diego State ugly, but it's barely a step above. And so, again, I think one thing that I've talked about this week is people want to talk about the contract and the buyout and $86 million and you can't fire him. The issue is not that you can't fire Jimbo Fisher, because I don't think you should. I don't think you should even have those conversations. The issue is that you have no leverage to make him do what is probably best for him that he might not think is best for him, which is maybe take your hands off the offense a bit, go to a more of a CEO role. Now, I'm not saying you have to hand over the offense entirely, but bring in somebody with some new ideas and do those kind of things. If I was him, I probably might consider handing the offense off entirely and doing something else completely, because I'm telling you, regardless of whatever happens, if they continue down this road where it's just Jimbo kind of banging his head against the wall with the offense, they might have some good seasons down the road. They'll never win a national championship, which is what he was hired to do. It will not happen with this offensive scheme. And so I think they're one scheme change away. Maybe I'm wrong, but they're just, this is the same team that I think they're sitting there at 4th in the 24/7 sports talent composite, the best recruiting class in the country. And the problem that you start running into too is if you start doing this stuff where you're banging your head against the wall and you're in a really frustrating spot in the portal era, you're going to start losing some of these guys. And then all of a sudden you're not quite as talented as you were, and you're going to be running a bad scheme on top of that. And it just declines. And then eventually somebody's going to cut that check and you're going to have wasted a lot of time and a lot of money.
I do think, and this is a very undercovered part of this equation because the defense has not been the issue. We all focus on the offense, but Mike Elko's doing a pretty good job at Duke right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a tiny, small, little additional just layer of things for Texas A&M to have to deal with. LSU, the big run against Ole Miss. The last week, the question was, is Ole Miss for real? Well, we'll find out. I think the questions are now, is LSU for real? Now, I'm curious, what do you think they are doing differently with Jayden Daniels? Because the last 2 weeks, the numbers are, 73% completion percentage. He's got 900 yards of offense, 11 touchdowns total, no interceptions, 73% completion percentage. What is it that LSU is doing differently? Is it just time in the system? Is it Daniels' maturation process? And is it something that can give Alabama some trouble here in 2 weeks?
I think some of it is confidence, early, especially you go back and watch that Florida State game, and even really the first month of the season, he just looked not comfortable. If the first read wasn't there, he was going to take off and maybe get you 5 or 6 yards, take a shot, and then sort of slowly get up and deal with that. What we've seen the last couple of weeks is, one, the running threat is still there, but when those windows are open, he's delivering it. And when you have a lot of confidence as a passer, not only are you have the confidence to pull the trigger on throws like that, you can hit it. He's obviously got the talent to do that. We've seen that the last couple of weeks, and he probably did have the talent early in the season, but whether it was comfort in the system, whether it was a lack of confidence in himself, he wasn't pulling the trigger. He had guys open, and he wasn't getting them the ball. I think you look at Keyshawn Boutte coming back and doing some things with Malik Neighbors. They've got some really nice receivers, some really good players. And he wasn't getting them the ball, and now he is. And you're kind of seeing LSU come into their own. And this is why you pay people like Brian Kelly, who's got 10-win seasons. He's coached some football, and this is a team that has improved a lot. And people forget, one, not only did they lose a ton in the portal and replace it with some, but still a net loss. They also lost Mason Smith, who's a borderline All-American defensive tackle up front the first week of the game, first week of the season, and their defense has held up pretty well. And so it's just an impressive bounce back for them, because I thought Tennessee was going to expose them, and they did. And I kind of wrote LSU off after that. I said, okay, this is the kind of 6-7 win team that I thought LSU was. And for them to come back and beat Auburn as soundly as they did, and then obviously Ole Miss, Ole Miss is the win that really made you sit up and take notice that, hey, LSU is better than I think I thought, and I think a lot of people thought, and that's 42-3 over 3 quarters against that Ole Miss team is unbelievable.
Well, and it's not to compare them to Tennessee because they got destroyed, but they are Tennessee light, athletic quarterback with a lot of ability, protects the football. Really good defensive line that likes to get after the quarterback. Questions in the secondary, good weapons at receiver. Like it's kind of a similar version than Tennessee, but just less than. And I did tell your boy Brody this, by the way, in the preseason. Mason Smith grades out so high they had to give him 2 A's. Okay, so you need to use that. Just make sure he cites his source. Make sure he cites his source. Right. Make sure he cites his sources. Florida, Georgia, least interesting cocktail party of your lifetime, my lifetime, our lifetimes.
I mean, last year was pretty uninteresting. I thought,
yeah, that's true.
But we'll see. It's hard to know what to make of Georgia because I generally think they're probably the best team. Maybe it's hard to know because they just have like
a lot of conviction there, Dave.
Well, they probably have the highest ceiling, but they have just looked really just not scary. And I think it's kind of unfair for Georgia because you're always going to kind of compare them to last year. And the defense was such an absolute behemoth last year. And the defense is merely one of the best in the country this year now. So it's like you're kind of downgrading them probably unfairly. So, we'll see. The offense has just been weird. I mean, ultimately, when you let Missouri take you to the brink, it's kind of hard to say, oh, Georgia's got this against anyone. And Anthony Richardson is a really special player, but I think Georgia can be able to lock him down, take away his legs, and then make him, be strictly a passer. I think they can do to him what they did to Bo Nix in the first week of the season. So we'll see. But I think it's going to take Anthony Richardson being Superman to make that game interesting. And against Georgia's defense, I'm not sure we're going to see that.
Do we all owe Shane Beamer an apology? I do.
People really don't like Shane Beamer, man.
Why?
I think I don't know. Maybe just people are haters. Listen, enthusiasm and caring about things and being happy when your guys do good, when your players do good things. Listen, it's fine. Like you should be able to have fun. And I think just because his team's not that scary and he, is very demonstrative on the sideline, people like to make fun of him. But he's the same guy sitting there. Yeah, he's sitting there at 5-2 right now, looking in great shape. They got a split between Missouri and Vanderbilt just to get to a bowl, and obviously, beating Kentucky, without Will Levis, but still beating them, beating Texas A&M. Like, listen, I said this week, South Carolina is an interesting spot because they're good enough to beat you, but they're not good enough. But they're also average enough that when you lose to them, it's like an existential crisis for everybody that loses. Like last year when they beat Florida, I thought they were going to get Dan Mullen fired immediately. I think that was sort of the beginning of the end. But, man, ultimately that team's gotten better. And Shane Beamer just sort of gets his guys. There's a lot of belief there, a lot of good vibes emanating from that program.
Yeah.
And they've got, beyond – once you get that Missouri and that Vanderbilt, if they can beat one of those two teams, which I suspect they will beat both, man – they get Tennessee and they get Clemson to close the season. And boy, they have a chance to absolutely just ruin a couple seasons. And oh man, the consternation and hand-wringing if they could beat either one of those teams will be off the charts.
Well, and I'm not even apologizing about his shtick or personality or the nepotism or whatever. Like, I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. Like, I just didn't think they were going to be very good at football. And they've been better, and they've been much better. They've been much better than I thought. So
yeah, I thought they'd be a fringe bowl team. But for them to be sitting here, tied for third in the East, going neck and neck with Kentucky with the tiebreaker, it's impressive. I mean, at the end of the day, last year their roster, especially at quarterback, I mean, for them to get to a bowl game and win it, that was some duct tape and twine stuff. They're much more talented this year. But Shane Beamer's had 2 years as a coach. And barring some sort of disaster, he's going to have overachieved in both of his first 2 years. I don't know what more you can ask for. So impressive stuff from Columbia, and I think people can mock away, and they're going to be sitting in bowl games again, and people feel good about their program.
If you want to mock him, he's going to come right back at you. So just be ready. Just be ready.
That's true.
Which I love.
So. The shot at Mark Stoops.
Oh, it's great.
Was fantastic. Like again. Like to the victor go the spoils. Right, and I think one thing that annoys me in this sport more than anything is for a lot of places, man, it seems like winning is a relief and losing is a crisis. Like winning should be fun. They have fun when they win. Yeah. Dancing in the locker room, celebrating. Like it's supposed to be fun, and he seems to enjoy it. So props to Shane Beamer.
Well, keep up the good work, my man. Great stuff at The Athletic. You can listen to him on Football and Grits. You can read him all over the website there. Lots of great stuff, doing good work. Everybody out there pay for good journalism, of course. That's why we have so many great guests from The Athletic on the show. David, thank you so much, man. We appreciate it. Enjoy the Kentucky game this weekend.
Thank you, Braden. Appreciate it, man. Anytime.
That was one of my favorite columnists in college football, David Ubbin, formerly covering the Vols, now covering college football in the SEC for The Athletic. If you have not read the story about the goalposts and how they ended up in the river and him walking all around campus and downtown in dress shoes for like 2 hours after the game, it is a extremely well-written piece. And he told me, and I believe this, he had this story planned before the game, that he was going to follow the goal. That is good. That is a good reporter right there.
Yes, it is. Got to be prepared.
He is very, very good at his job.
He wore the wrong shoes for having done that much preparation.
Yes, exactly. Why not have some Jordans on or something, man? You can wear Jordans with a suit these days.
100%. Yeah.
Some Air Force Ones. All right. So quickly with the cocktail party, and then a compliment for Auburn and a question about Arkansas. I don't have a lot to say about the cocktail party. And the fact that I don't have a lot to say about the cocktail party feels like it is the story.
That's the story.
Because I asked Ubbin, I said, when's the last time it meant this little? And he was like, last year. And it's kind of true.
Yeah.
They're a 22-point underdog. Florida's a nice amuse-bouche for Georgia. I know our SEC audience knows exactly what that is. It's a nice appetizer for Georgia to warm up for Tennessee, because this is the start of the tough stretch for Georgia in their schedule. So I want to see them go down the field. How creative are you with those tight ends? Go down the field and get prepped for Tennessee next week.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia is very likely going to win this game. I don't think either of us feel that Florida really has a chance, but just it does feel less significant this year, this matchup. It's normally one of the more fun ones to talk about. There's a lot of excitement around it, whether it's just the traditions or the game itself. If it's going to be interesting, Anthony Richardson is going to be pulling a lot of that weight, but it's just not. I mean, it's just we might find some things out about what Richardson's development or like what he can do, but it's not going to be a close game.
And I even feel like it's going to be ugly too. Like I think it could be like 32-12.
I think it's
something like it's not even going to be fun blowout.
It's not going to be Florida finding out it's not going to be Florida losing, but finding out a lot of really useful information about how they can move forward. It's going to be probably just exposing more weaknesses, and it's just going to be bad to be on tape.
Yeah, kind of like the weather right now in Nashville.
Right.
Bad to be on tape. So anyway, the fact that we're going to do an hour plus show today,
and the cocktail parties,
and the cocktail party gets a minute and a half at after an hour of talk is just a statement of how good Georgia is and the rebuild for Florida and Billy Napier. There's just no question about that. But like you said, I hope that they can find some stuff out and learn some stuff. So we'll see. Quickly here, Arkansas and Auburn. We'll wrap up and then we'll send you on your merry way. First of all, a compliment for Auburn, and then a question for Arkansas. The compliment for Auburn is, I think the players deserve a lot of credit for what they're doing, because it makes no sense that Brian Harson's still employed. It makes no sense that they haven't made the moves. It makes no sense. And they played pretty hard against Ole Miss. Like, they didn't quit against Ole Miss. They didn't quit. Like, they have not quit. And this is a 4-point spread in a game that is normally very crazy. This is like the Bo Nix fumble game multiple times. Like, it is just, again, Vegas thinks Auburn's going to play hard in this game at home against Arkansas. So eventually you just got to say, you know what, players for the Auburn Tigers, with all the craziness that's swirling, all the meetings that are happening in back rooms and all the internet rumors and all the garbage, good for you guys for actually just giving a shit and playing hard every time. Good job. Good job.
It's hard to maintain mental stamina at this point when you know your program's falling apart in a way. I'm not saying that they could have been worse this season, but just with their head coach, they know he's going to be gone. And it's just not the Auburn that they're used to being. It's hard to have it's such a physical sport when you're giving up your body, your bodily well-being. It's hard to stay motivated when you feel like,
bodily well-being.
Man, yeah. What should I call it?
No, that's right. Your
physical health, that could have worked.
Personal health and
physical
safety.
Health could have worked. Yeah. It's just, I think that is the takeaway. Arkansas, I really hope that they're still on the right track. I think that I would have liked to have seen them be able to pull some more stuff off this season. And I thought that they were on that path. But there's been some hiccups in the road, which I don't think that necessarily says anything about the longevity of whether or not Sam Pittman's going to work and the coaching staff that they have, right now. It's just taking a little bit longer than the Sam Pittman obsessed people of the world wanted it to.
She points as she points at herself. I think it is a commentary on how hard it is to win, and I'm going to include Mississippi State in this because they have one of their better teams and are going to have a good year by the end of the whole thing. And Arkansas is probably going to have a good team most of the year. Both of those teams could win 10 games in the ACC Coastal. Both of those teams could win 10 games and win the Big Ten West. I think it is a function of how deep and how difficult this league is when everyone is going the right way. Mm-hmm. Because even when A&M is having all the troubles they had, they still, with a couple of lucky bounces, beat Arkansas.
Right.
Like LSU now is better, right? Automatically, right. With Brian Kelly. Like everybody, Tennessee's better now. Like Georgia's winning a national title. Like it shows you how fine the margins are for a program like Arkansas and Mississippi State, where you can have really good quarterbacks, really good coaches, pretty darn good teams. Mm-hmm. And if you just like screw up like 2 Saturdays, you're going to end up being 7-5 and feeling disappointed, even though you probably shouldn't be.
Right. It's true. All of that.
Yep.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
We love you, Arkansas. We love you, Mississippi State. Hang in there. It's a tough job.
Tough to see.
It's a tough job. I think that's going to be a good game. Like it's a 4-point spread. Arkansas, Auburn, like Ole Miss, A&M. You got Kentucky. This is going to be a hell of a weekend.
Very, very passionate programs and passionate fan bases. So
going to be a lot of fun. Going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for David Oven for joining us as well. Make sure you go check out Jayden Dunn. JayDunn.com, of course, is the website. Make a good, smart career decision, unlike Jimbo Fisher, and do something that's going to benefit the long-term health and security, personal safety of your career, personal health and well-being. Is that what you said about
bodily
well-being? Injury? Yeah. JayDunn.com, man. $5 billion in annual.
Just cut you off like crazy.
It's fine.
But here's the thing, guys. If you don't like, whether or not, I don't know what you want to do, but if you are interested in going to probably a pretty legit Christmas party, if you apply now, you might get hired in time to go to Jay Dunn's Christmas party. And I bet they're going to it's going to be off the charts.
Those parties are,
so
I've been around them. They're
just saying, if you don't care about your job, fine, but you might get to go to a really nice Christmas party.
And
but I don't.
And find, personal growth and inspiration to continue busting your tail for your boss and employer.
Whatever floats your boat.
Because they care about your career and the success and health and safety of you as well as an employee. JayDunn.com, $5 billion in annual revenue, offices all across the Southeast. If you're looking to make a career move, or you're just not inspired, or you just feel like you hate your boss, which is almost everybody, just check out JayDunn.com. I hate my boss, and that's me. JayDunn.com. Go check it out. I'll be at JayDunn here soon. All right. Otherwise, enjoy the weekend of football. Erin, where can people find you?
The Erin Dugan on Twitter and Erin_Dugan on Instagram.
You can get to me at Braden Gall, YouTube page, rate, review, subscribe, of course, 440 Sports on the YouTube and the Twitters as well. Thank you guys all for hanging out with us. Thanks to David Ubben as well. For Erin, I'm Braden. Have a great weekend, everybody. This has been Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network.
Bye, Braden and other people.